Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Faith and I am a homeschooling mom to 4, and today I'm going to be chatting about homeschool co-ops. And I will just go ahead and start and apologize for the lighting in this video that is keep covering my eyes. But guys, I don't even know what day I'm on with my hair, and dry shampoo just was not going to work today. So you guys have faith today. So I apologize in advance and hope that the lighting on my face doesn't drive you nuts as much as it's going to drive me nuts. But let's go ahead. I want to go ahead and start off with giving you a little bit of background about our family and how co-ops have played into our homeschooling journey. So we are 7 years into homeschooling. We have homeschooled from the very get-go. And over the course of those 7 years, we have been involved in some form of a co-op, 4 different co-ops in those 7 years. And what's funny is even at some points we were actually involved in 2 at a time. So there have been times where we've been in 1 or in 2 or 1 and and none at some point. So but over the course of that time, 4 different co-ops. Now, we are fortunate to live in an area that is just really saturated with homeschoolers. We have lots of homeschoolers, lots of homeschool groups and co-ops. So there really is a lot of availability of different organizations, different groups, different get-togethers, that we can get involved in. And I have been so blessed and so fortunate. I know some people across the US aren't, as blessed as that to have tons of options to choose from. So I just want to kind of go over some just differences between the co-ops, and kind of share it can range from this to this and this to this, being involved with 4, but also knowing of tons of other ones that are available in our area. I've heard a lot of different things or experienced them. So let me just go ahead and go through a list. They can be very formal, where you have paid teachers or tutors, where you are going to a class, you have certain expectations. It can be just super strict, super formal, almost kind of like a school setting. Or you can have very informal, where you have a group of people who maybe have a set day in the month or, every other week. But you might meet at someone's house, or if it's good weather, you might meet at a park, or, you don't really know what you're going to do, but you have a set aside time where you're planning on getting together, and it might be a science experiment day, it might be an art day, it might be a park day, it might be a free-for-all day. So you can go from both ends of the spectrum. You can go very formal, where everything is laid out, exactly what you're going to learn, to let's fly by the seat of our pants. Another spectrum is that it can be a major part of your curriculum. I have shared before that we have in the past been involved in classical conversations and in a classical conversations co-op. So we had that as a very important part of our curriculum. It was very core to us. So you can have something that's a major piece. You have a science class that you go to, and that is your science. You can have a math or a foreign language. You could have something that is very core to your homeschool and what you're learning. On the other hand, you can have something that is very much just extracurricular and fun. We've also been involved in one of these where it's just very much extra. We call it like the cherry on the top. It's fun, and you might be doing like gym class or Lego building class or a science experiment, which was great, but it was just an extra thing. It was just fun. So you can have, the whole gamut of that as well. Some other aspects are that it can be free, or it could be very expensive, or somewhere in between. Again, I've done ones that are free. I've done some that are, $30 to $50, and then I've done some that are hundreds of dollars. So there's another varying spectrum. Another thing is that parent involvement can really vary. You can have some groups that are drop-off programs, where you're dropping your kid off for the day, you're going to come back and pick them up. There is a paid teacher there, or someone there that is responsible for your kid while you're not there. On the other hand, you can have ones that actually require a lot of parent participation, where you're going to be required to be there if your child is on the campus ground and you are not permitted to leave. Or again, somewhere in between, where you might teach a class or be involved in a class for half the day, or the other part you might be, chatting and catching up with other homeschool moms. Again, been involved with the whole gamut right here. And lastly, you can have some that are going to require a lot of prep. They might require homework. Those ones that are like key to your homeschool, they might require you to do some work outside of the program or the class or the co-op. On the other hand, you just have other groups that are like, just show up and have some fun. You're not going to be required to do anything outside of this group or this co-op. So obviously, as I've shared, we have experienced like this full gamut of like all of these different options. And honestly, it has changed throughout this season of life based on the things that we have needed, how many kids I've had, the different things that are going on in our life. And that's okay. You can be involved in some, none, or a lot. And it all depends on what the needs are of your family. And it can change throughout your homeschooling journey. So if you're trying to decide, okay, do I want to be involved in a co-op? Those are some things that you might need to consider. You're going to have to sit down and say, okay, for our homeschool, what are we looking for in a co-op? Do I want it to be drop-off? Do I want it to be free? Do I want to be involved? Do I want extra work from the co-op? These are all different kinds of things that, before you jump into a co-op, you kind of have to figure out, okay, well, what am I looking for? What do I need for my family? What gap am I trying to fill? Am I just looking for friends? Am I trying to find my tribe? Do I need something to add to our homeschool? Am I have this hole that I need to fill? Am I not qualified? Do I not feel qualified to maybe teach a certain subject that I need to outsource? These are all questions you're going to have to ask yourself before you can really like narrow in and say, okay, I'm going to join this co-op because this is going to fit my needs and the needs of my kids. Now, maybe you're asking yourself, why would I want to join a co-op? And I think that is a very valid question. A lot of those things are, again, depending on all those factors that I just discussed. Like, do we have gaps that we need to fill? Am I looking to find friends and people who are in the same stage of life as me and my kids? Like, those are kind of the questions that you're going to have to ask yourself. And honestly, the reasons that people join co-ops, they're all going to be different. We have different things. We're in different seasons of our life. Like, your reason for wanting to join a co-op is going to be totally different from my family or somebody else's, and that's okay. And you know what? I want to point out another thing is it's totally okay if you don't want to be in a co-op as well. Don't feel pressured to have your family doing something that you don't feel is the right time, the right season, or the right thing to fill and take up time in your family. Sometimes we go through seasons where we are burnt out. It's just not the right time. Or we need a break from a co-op. All of those are valid reasons of why you don't, it just doesn't fit for you. Whatever the case is, don't feel this co-op guilt that because I homeschool, I have to be involved in all these different activities. Everyone's going to bring up this idea of socialization, but there are lots of different ways to socialize your kids. Maybe you have your kids in sports and all these extracurricular activities. Co-op is one way to fill, and get our kids some socialization and have them have them with their friends. So let's not make it seem that this is the only way that we can get our kids around other kids. All right, before I go, I just want to end with laying out some pros and cons, at least at what I have found, of being in a co-op. So like I shared, we've been in several different ones, and I'm just going to share some pros and cons. And I'm going to start with the cons. We'll end on a happier note. So some cons. The first one that I can think of is that you're going to lose a day of school in your own personal homeschool. So if you have a curriculum that's going to have a ton of lessons and it requires you to do schoolwork 5 days a week, it's either going to make it difficult to squeeze in those 5 days. You're going to either have to squeeze 5 days into 4 days, or you're going to go to your co-op and you're going to have to come home and finish squeezing all of those worksheets, lessons, you name it, after you get home, or complete them before you leave. So there's just one thing to consider. In our co-op in our homeschool, when we were in a co-op, the co-op days were not days that we were doing school. So imagine when we were involved in 2 different co-ops, we were actually losing 2 days of schoolwork in our personal homeschool, which made it a challenge to get through the different lessons. Now, were they still learning at their co-op? Of course. And I still counted those as days of school. The school just looked different. The learning just looked different. But we weren't getting through all of our lessons. That's, completely up to you as the mom, as the teacher, the person who's in charge. If you want to, stretch your year out longer, squeeze in extra lessons. It's just something to consider when you're deciding whether or not you're going to be in a co-op. Another thing is that it can be costly. If you're going to join a co-op that has a high cost, or if it's going to be a drop-off program where you're paying a teacher to teach, a chemistry class or a biology class or a foreign language class, things that might be a little bit more difficult to teach at your own home, it's probably going to have a significant cost that goes with it. So that's something to consider. Do you have the funds available to join this co-op or this homeschool group? Another aspect to consider is that it could potentially give you some restrictions on your schedule because people are counting on you. So if you're involved in a co-op, meaning a cooperative where someone is counting on you to show up to teach or to be in charge of children or have, you're playing a part in that co-op, you can't just pick up and decide, oh, it's a really nice day, let's go to a park. We have a long weekend, let's just go ahead and go on a little weekend trip. Someone's counting on you. So if you aren't there, you've created a hole and a gap in the plans with everyone else. And that kind of leads to the next point, is that you can be involved in a co-op that isn't very co-op-y. And what do I mean by that? So a co-op, cooperative, meaning that everyone is chipping in and pulling their weight and making things go off seamlessly. In one of these, you're really not paying so much for the teaching and the tutors or all the things. You might have to chip in for supplies, like if you're gonna have a science class or an art class, you might have to chip in to just pay the supplies, but you're not paying your teacher because everyone is chipping in and pulling their weight. Now, I've been involved in co-ops where everyone does not pull their weight, and sometimes that can just be frustrating when you feel like you're really pouring into something and you have people who maybe don't take it as seriously as you do, or they're just not, pulling their weight in the co-op. So that's something to consider. It can, cause tension in the co-op, make it a little bit more frustrating. Just something, maybe make sure that whoever you're joining with or the people that you're surrounding you with, that they can be trusted to make sure that they're putting as much time and effort into the co-op as you will be as well. Now, the last con that I can think of, and honestly, it's a little silly, but it is still something to consider, is that being involved in a co-op actually requires you to get up and to get ready, get your kids dressed, get them teeth brushed, get their shoes on, pack lunches, and get out the door and be somewhere on time. As homeschoolers, we are typically not prepared for this. Yeah, we're used to sitting at home in our pajamas all day and not going anywhere. And, sometimes when you throw into the mix at co-op, it makes it a little bit more of a stressful morning because you're not used to getting up and getting out and somewhere on time. So that's just something to consider. If you are a morning person and you're easy to get your crew out the door, that's probably not going to be something to consider. But for mine, it can be a challenge sometimes. So just something to consider. All right, let's move to the pros list now. So the first pro is that it does give your kids an opportunity to be learning from someone other than you as their parent. We sometimes worry, okay, are they going to be able to, sit in a chair and take direction from somebody else and be obedient and not run to the bathroom on a whim or go get a snack and a drink in the midst while I'm talking? Those are some things that maybe in your homeschool you allow because you realize kids need to move. But every once in a while, we need to be able to sit in a chair and listen to somebody else and be able to follow the rules that someone else has given us. And so it's kind of given your kid a little glimpse of what maybe a traditional school-like system would be, although I would probably guess it's a little bit more lenient and a little bit more relaxed than a school system, but it does give them a glimpse. For my kids, they have always been homeschooled, so they don't even know what the inside of a school looks like. So this gives them a little bit of a glimpse of, a traditional school experience. Another pro is that this gives you an opportunity to outsource some of the classes or subjects or topics that maybe you do not feel are strengths for you. So, especially if you're talking like high school, homeschooling high schoolers, where you have biology and dissection and chemistry experiments and learning a foreign language, those more difficult subjects that might be a little bit harder to teach if you're not really well versed in those things. And honestly, those would be things that I would want to outsource. So that gives an opportunity to lean on the experiences and the expertise of someone who is well versed in those. Another pro is that this allows you to find your tribe. We all need friends. We all want friends. It's also important, I believe, to have friends who are in the same journey as you, who are homeschooling. Like, I have friends who are homeschoolers, and I have friends who are not homeschoolers, and I love them all dearly. But I do rely on my homeschooling friends in a different capacity. I need someone who I can call or text and tell them, I am having a bad day, I want to quit. And I need that person to say, stop what you're doing, put the books away, go to a park. You're not quitting, but you need to step away. And you need the people who understand the struggle and not and are just going to give you that encouragement and that push to just take a breather, call it a day. Tomorrow's mercies will be new. So find your tribe. That's one, honestly, that's probably my biggest pro, is that my co-ops have led to my tribe. I have found my people, the people that are my dearest friends, and that their kids are my kids' dearest friends. And I love that. I love that we have found them. We have similar, personalities, and the kids get along, and we can chat about curriculum and struggles, and just overall just be an encouragement to one another. If I have a question, there are other moms there that I can ask, and they can point me in the direction. Oh, you're having trouble with this, why don't you try this curriculum? Oh, you know what, I found this really good, try this. They are a great source of information. And kind of in line with that as well is that I've been able to find some homeschool groups that actually allow you to have time to converse with other parents. So some co-ops involve parent participation 100% of the time. You're on. Other ones allow you, okay, I want you to teach or help in a class for half the time, and the other half you're going to go to like the parent lounge, and you're going to get a snack, and you're going to sit around, and you're going to talk with other moms and other parents who are in this co-op, and you're just going to have a veg hour or two to sit and talk with them. And that time is, when you catch up and you get that encouragement, you get to be a normal mom for a little bit. You don't have someone pulling on you. You can, laugh and have fun and tell stories and eat snacks. It's a super great time. I love those kinds of co-ops that afford you that time to get together. And as well as letting my kids play, the recess time, and allowing our kids to play. They're making their friends, I'm making my friends, and we're all getting that time that just really fills our souls and, makes us realize what a blessing homeschool is. All right, so maybe after watching this and the cons haven't completely scared you of like, oh, I'm never joining a co-op ever, and you do think that you want to join a co-op, where do you go? How do you find one? I have a couple of suggestions. One, if you are involved in a local church, a lot of times you can find other parents, families who are homeschooling in your church. Ask around, ask your pastor if they are aware of any people in your congregation who homeschool, that they can point you in the direction. Kind of when you find one homeschooler, they might be able to point you to another group. It's like once you find one, it just kind of branches off and goes from there. You can also ask your friends, maybe they don't homeschool, but they might know their neighbor across the street homeschools, or, hey, I did hear of someone else who, lives by my parents. Whatever it is, ask some friends, just get the word out. Hey, I'm trying to get in touch with some other homeschooling parents or families. Can you point me in the right direction? Another quick another quick idea is to just do a quick Google search. So when I do that and I just type in my city and homeschool groups, it brought up a plethora of options. And they might all not be winners, but you might find that, getting into one can lead to other ones. And you can always just find one and go with it. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, there's no harm in stepping back and say, this just wasn't a good fit for our family. And lastly, social media, honestly, for as many awful things that can happen on social media, you can also find a lot of good things. And just going on Facebook and searching homeschool groups, or Instagram, whatever, social media platform you're using, you can go on and search homeschool groups, your city. They'll pop up. You can request to be a part of one, and just making connections. You can get on there. A lot of times people are this age of kids, or I'm looking for a co-op that would be like a gym class, or I'm looking for a co-op that just wants to be field trips. I've seen them pop up all over, people asking all these different questions, so I would definitely check that out. And lastly, if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of this availability, I know my area is saturated with homeschoolers and homeschool co-ops and groups. If you don't, just build your own. Start one. Find 1, 2 other families who you want to start and just get together. Have park play dates. Get together at each other's house. Say, hey, I'd like to start a little book club. We can get together and read these books and have a tea time together. We could have a poetry class. We could have an art class. Let's do a science. Let's study the human body over the course of 10 weeks or whatever you want to do. You have endless options when you get together with even just 1 or 2 other families. Create your own tribe and let it build from there. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little chat about homeschool co-ops. If you have any other tips, pros, cons, anything, drop them in the comments below. If you have any questions, as always, you can put them down below as well, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And until next time, guys, have a blessed day.